Nadia. That is not her name. Nadia. I don't know why you say that.
New developments in the case of Mahogany Jackson. Birmingham police say 8 people played a role in her deadly kidnapping back in February. WVTM 13's Magdala Lusan joins us now live with more. Magdala?
Yes, Sherry, a grand jury decided all of them will now be facing capital murder charges. These are the 8 people charged in Mahogany Jackson's murder. Some of them were already charged with capital murder. Others were facing only sodomy and felony murder charges. That was until the grand jury recently decided and agreed with the Jefferson County DA that everyone should be charged with capital murder.
You contributed to what ended up with my child being gone. Like, she's gone, she's never coming back. And that is so hard for me. It's so hard, you know. I get sad thinking about, you know, how much life she still had ahead of her. That's gone. There's nothing I can do about it. It's nothing I can do about it. You know, I used to say to my kids all the time, you know, hey, whatever issue you got, come to me, I'll help you with it. I can't fix this. There's nothing that I can do to fix what happened to my daughter.
February 25, 2024, a mother received a text message that would haunt her forever. Send the police at 3 held hostage. Don't call. The message came from her 20-year-old daughter, Mahogany Jackson, who was trapped inside a Birmingham apartment fighting for her life. But here's what makes this case so shocking. The 8 people torturing Mahogany weren't strangers who broke into her home. They weren't random criminals who snatched her off the street. These were people she knew, people she trusted, people she considered friends. For over 30 hours, they held her captive, moving her from place to place across Birmingham. They beat her, assaulted her, and filmed every horrific moment. And when Mahogany finally managed to send that desperate plea for help, they discovered her secret message. This girl was hurt by people she trusted. Have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be dangerous? Because what happened next will show you just how deadly that mistake can be. This was when the worst began. This is the story of Mahogany Jackson. Before diving deeper, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Because what happened to Mahogany Jackson could happen anywhere. This is the chilling reality of how friendship, trust, betrayal, and unseen dangers collided in a tragedy that no one saw coming. Welcome to True Crime's venue, where we revisit cases that haunt communities long after the cameras leave. If you're new, hit subscribe and ring that bell. You won't want to miss what's next. Mahogany Jackson was just 20 years old when her life was cut short in February 2024. Born and raised in Jasper, Alabama, she had moved to Birmingham with big dreams and an even bigger heart. Her world revolved around her 3-year-old daughter, Nydia, who was the light of her life. She loved the color pink and had dreams of becoming a cosmetologist. She wanted to build a better future for herself and her little girl. Like many young mothers, she was working hard to leave behind the mistakes of her past and create something beautiful for her family. But Birmingham streets can be dangerous, especially when you're trying to distance yourself from the wrong crowd. Mahogany had been making an effort to change her life. But some connections from her past weren't ready to let her go. In the weeks leading up to her death, Mahogany had been dealing with a serious problem. Someone had stolen a gun from her, and she knew exactly who had taken it. This wasn't just about a missing weapon. It was about respect, trust, and standing up for herself in a world where showing weakness could be deadly. On February 24, 2024, Mahogany made a decision that would cost her everything. She decided to confront the person who had stolen from her. She wanted her property back, and she was willing to face the thief directly to get it. What Mahogany didn't know was that this confrontation would trigger a chain of events so brutal and shocking that even experienced police officers would struggle to process what happened. The person she was about to confront had friends, dangerous friends who would turn a simple dispute into one of the most horrific crimes Birmingham had ever seen. On February 24th, Mahogany Jackson walked into what she thought would be a simple confrontation. She had tracked down 24-year-old Brandon Pope, the man who had stolen her gun. This wasn't some random criminal. Brandon was part of her social circle, someone she knew from the streets of Birmingham. Mahogany wasn't playing games that day. She was armed and ready to get her property back. When she found Brandon, she didn't waste time with small talk. She pulled out her own weapon and demanded he return what he had stolen from her. But Mahogany wanted to send a message. This wasn't just about getting her gun back. It was about respect. In front of his friends, she forced Brandon to strip down to his underwear at gunpoint. For a man trying to maintain his reputation on the streets, this was the ultimate humiliation. Brandon stood there nearly naked while Mahogany held him at gunpoint. His friends watched as this young woman made him look weak and powerless. In that moment, something dangerous shifted in the room. The embarrassment was eating at Brandon, and his anger was building to a breaking point. After Mahogany got what she came for, she left. She probably thought the matter was settled. She had her gun back. She had made her point. And Brandon had learned not to steal from her again. But she was wrong. The humiliation Brandon felt that day wouldn't just disappear. As soon as Mahogany was gone, his rage took over. The fact that a woman had embarrassed him in front of his crew was something he couldn't let slide. In his mind, there had to be consequences. That's when Brandon made a decision that would turn a simple theft dispute into a nightmare. He looked at his friends, Francis Harris, Jeremiah McDowell, and the others who had witnessed his shame, and gave them a command that would seal Mahogany's fate. "Do something to her," he told them. Those 4 words would launch one of the most brutal crimes Birmingham had ever seen. What started as Mahogany trying to get her stolen property back was about to become a 30-hour torture session that would end with her death. And the worst part, every single person involved in what happened next was someone she knew and trusted. Brandon Pope's command set everything in motion. Within hours of being humiliated, Brandon had gathered a group of 8 people who were ready to make Mahogany pay for what she had done. These weren't hardened criminals or gang members. They were people from Mahogany's own social circle, people she had laughed with, hung out with, and trusted. The group included Francis Harris, 25, Jeremiah McDowell, 18, Giovanni Clapp, 23, Blair Green, 25, Sinead McCall, 23, Ja Lewis, 26, and Ariana Robinson, 23. Some were men, some were women, some were older, some were barely adults. But they all had one thing in common. They were about to commit one of the most horrific crimes Birmingham had ever seen. They found Mahogany and took her captive. What happened next would last for more than 30 hours and move across multiple locations throughout Birmingham. The group wasn't just angry. They were methodical. They planned to make Mahogany suffer for as long as possible. They moved her from place to place to avoid being caught. First one apartment, then another location, then another. Each time they relocated, the abuse continued. They beat her repeatedly, leaving her body broken and bruised. They sexually assaulted her in ways that police would later describe as beyond comprehension. But the physical abuse was only part of the horror. They also tortured her mentally, telling her she was going to die, making her beg for her life, and giving her false hope that they might let her go if she cooperated. They forced her to endure humiliation after humiliation, breaking down her spirit piece by piece. Perhaps the most shocking part of this entire crime was that they filmed it. Multiple members of the group took out their phones and recorded what they were doing to Mahogany. They documented their own crimes, creating evidence that would later be used to convict them. Police Chief Scott Thurman would later say that the suspect's decision to videotape portions of this horrific act made the facts of the case public.
It's hurtful to know that 7 individuals could participate in such vile acts, but this case highlights the strength and the effectiveness of the partnership between the Birmingham Police Department and our community, as 7 suspects are now behind the bars and will soon be in custody of the Jefferson County Jail with no bond. And I'll tell you, as many of you know, I served a number of years in the homicide unit, and this is undoubtedly one of the most heinous acts I've seen in my career. It's absolutely disgusting.
These weren't people trying to hide their crimes. They were proud of what they were doing. They wanted to remember it. They wanted to show others. As the hours passed, the abuse got worse. What started as revenge for Brandon's humiliation had turned into something much darker. The group fed off each other's energy, each person trying to outdo the others in terms of cruelty. Mahogany was no longer a person to them. She had become an object for their rage and violence. For more than a day, Mahogany endured torture that most people couldn't survive. She was beaten, assaulted, moved from location to location, and forced to endure psychological abuse that was designed to break her completely. Through it all, she held on to hope that somehow, someway, she might make it out alive. The group showed no mercy. Even when Mahogany begged for her life, even when she promised she wouldn't tell anyone what happened, even when she pleaded with them to think about her 3-year-old daughter who needed her mother, they continued the abuse. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt unsafe, but didn't know how to get out? The warning signs were probably there, but sometimes we ignore them because we trust the wrong people. Mahogany's story shows us just how quickly people we know can turn dangerous. But Mahogany wasn't ready to give up. Even after hours of torture, she was still looking for a way to survive. And on the morning of February 25th, she would find one last chance to call for help. At 7:46 a.m. on February 25th, Mahogany saw her chance. After more than 24 hours of torture, her captors had let their guard down for just a moment. She grabbed her phone and typed the most important message of her life. Send the police. App 3 held hostage. Don't call. She hit send and prayed her mother would see it in time. This was her last hope, her final attempt to save her own life. Back home, Mahogany's mother, Gail, was going about her morning when her phone buzzed. When she read the message, her world stopped. Her daughter was in danger, and she needed help immediately. Gail didn't hesitate. She called 911 right away. The police rushed to the Serenity Apartments on Serenity Drive where Mahogany's message had indicated she was being held. Officers raced up the stairs to apartment 3, ready to rescue a young mother who was fighting for her life. But when they broke down the door, the apartment was empty. There was no sign of Mahogany or her captors. The group had already moved her to another location, staying one step ahead of law enforcement. Meanwhile, Mahogany's captors had discovered what she had done. They found the text message she had sent to her mother, and their anger reached a new level. Not only had she embarrassed Brandon Pope, but now she had tried to bring the police into their business. But instead of killing her immediately, they saw an opportunity. They forced Mahogany to unlock her phone by giving them her passcode. They wanted access to her contacts, her messages, and her social media accounts. They told her that if she cooperated and gave them what they wanted, they would let her live. Give us the password and we'll let you go, they promised her. Mahogany, desperate to survive and get back to her 3-year-old daughter, gave them the information they demanded. She probably believed that cooperation was her only chance of making it out alive. She had already endured more than 24 hours of torture. Maybe if she just did what they asked, this nightmare would finally end. But this was just another lie in a long series of lies. The group had no intention of letting Mahogany go. They had already decided her fate, and her desperate attempt to call for help had only sealed it. The text message that was supposed to save her life had instead guaranteed her death. After Mahogany gave them her phone password, the group made their final decision. Despite their promise to let her live, they had been lying all along. Frances Harris, the 25-year-old who would later be identified as the shooter, took charge of what happened next. The group loaded Mahogany into a vehicle and drove her to a remote area in Birmingham. This wasn't a random location. They had chosen a spot where they thought no one would find her body. It was isolated, away from busy streets and curious eyes. When they reached the dump site, Mahogany probably still believed she might survive. She had given them everything they asked for. She had cooperated completely. She had endured more than 30 hours of torture without fighting back. Maybe, just maybe, they would keep their word. But Frances Harris had other plans. As Mahogany stood at that remote location, probably hoping this nightmare was finally over, Harris raised his gun and shot her in the back of the head. The execution was quick and cold. After everything she had survived, after all the hope she had held on to, Mahogany Jackson's life ended with a single gunshot. The group didn't just leave her body there. They tried to hide what they had done by covering her with old mattresses and debris, treating her like garbage instead of the young mother she was. They thought they could make her disappear completely, as if she had never existed. For hours, Mahogany's body lay hidden in that remote area while her family desperately searched for answers. Her mother, Gail, was still hoping the police would find her daughter alive. Her 3-year-old daughter, Nydia, was waiting for her mommy to come home. But on February 26th, their worst fears became reality. A witness walking through the area discovered something that didn't belong. When they moved the mattresses aside, they found Mahogany's body. The young mother, who had fought so hard to survive, was finally found, but it was too late. This discovery of Mahogany's body set off a chain reaction that would bring swift justice. The Birmingham community was outraged by what had happened to this young mother. Tips started pouring into police, with people providing information about who might be responsible. Within days, law enforcement had identified all 8 suspects. The same videos that the group had filmed to document their crimes became the evidence that would convict them. Their decision to record their own brutality had created a trail that led police directly to their doors. One by one, the arrests began. The people who thought they had gotten away with murder were about to learn that justice was coming for them. The 8 people who destroyed Mahogany Jackson's life weren't career criminals or hardened killers. They were young adults from Birmingham, ranging in age from 18 to 26. Most shocking of all, they were people Mahogany knew and trusted. What made this case so easy to solve was the evidence the suspects created themselves. Police Chief Scott Thurman called their decision to videotape portions of the crime the saddest part of the entire case. These videos didn't just show what happened to Mahogany. They showed exactly who was responsible. The footage was so disturbing that Chief Thurman, a veteran law enforcement officer, called it one of the most heinous acts he had seen in his career. He described the facts as deplorable and sickening and said the crime was absolutely disgusting. When the arrests began, the charges were serious. Brandon Pope, Francis Harris, and Jeremiah McDowell were each charged with capital murder during first-degree kidnapping and capital murder during first-degree sodomy. These charges carry the possibility of the death penalty in Alabama. Giovanni Clapp, Blair Green, and Sinia McCall faced charges of felony murder, first-degree kidnapping, and first-degree sodomy. Ja Lewis was charged with felony murder, while Ariana Robinson was charged with felony murder in connection with kidnapping. All 8 suspects were denied bond, meaning they would remain in jail while awaiting trial. But as the case moved through the court system, some changes occurred during a preliminary hearing. The capital murder charges based on rape and sodomy against Pope and McDowell were dismissed. McDowell's attorney, Glennon Threat, argued that his client maintained his innocence and claimed the state had been overcharging the defendants. Additionally, Clapp's assault charge was reduced from second-degree to third-degree assault. These legal developments showed how the justice system works. Initial charges don't always stick as prosecutors review evidence and build their cases. Despite these modifications, all 8 suspects still face serious charges that could result in life in prison or even the death penalty. The core charges of capital murder and felony murder remain in place for the group.
We had to figure out a calendar, trial dates, whether they'll be tried together, whether they'll be tried separate. There are laws that dictate that as well.
The justice system moved swiftly in the case of Mahogany Jackson, not because of public outcry or media pressure, but because the evidence left little room for doubt. Those responsible had essentially handed prosecutors a confession in the form of their own video recordings. The brutal footage captured every painful moment, every horrifying act, and every face involved. There was no ambiguity about what took place, who was involved, or the level of depravity that Mahogany endured. As legal proceedings unfolded, her loved ones were left waiting, not for answers, which they already had, but for accountability. Mahogany's mother, Gail, and her 3-year-old daughter, Nydia, would never see her again. No verdict, no sentence, no amount of justice could bring her back. All they could hope for was that the courts would recognize the sheer cruelty of the crime and deliver the harshest consequences to the 8 individuals responsible for destroying not just one life, but a family's entire future. In the wake of Mahogany's murder, the focus extended beyond the young woman who lost her life. Her daughter, a toddler barely old enough to form complete sentences, was now motherless. Nydia had once clung to Mahogany's arms, depended on her for everything from bedtime routines to daily comfort. And now, she was left with questions no child should ever have to ask. Why isn't mommy coming home? Who will tuck me in tonight? Who will kiss me when I fall and scrape my knees? At just 3 years old, Nydia had her entire world turned upside down. For Gail, the pain went even deeper. She wasn't just mourning her daughter, she was grappling with the agonizing memory of receiving that last desperate message from Mahogany. A simple text, yet one that screamed of fear and urgency. Send the police at 3 held hostage. Don't call. She had done exactly what any mother would have, alerted authorities immediately. But despite acting swiftly, it wasn't enough. Gail was left burdened by the haunting reality that she couldn't protect her child. And now, she had to carry her grief while helping a young girl navigate life without a mother. The community of Birmingham was left reeling. The sheer brutality of what Mahogany endured shook the city. It wasn't just the violence, it was the betrayal, the intimacy of the crime, and the coldness with which it was carried out. Mahogany wasn't murdered by strangers. She was tortured by people she had once known, people she might have called friends. When her story became public, people across the city, many of whom had never met her, found themselves deeply affected. Her story became a symbol of everything that can go wrong when trust is misplaced. Vigils were held in Mahogany's memory. Candles lit the sidewalks as community members gathered, some in prayer, others in silent reflection. Her name echoed through social media, local news reports, and neighborhood conversations. And then came the detail that shocked even the most hardened observers, the videos. Her killers had filmed themselves. They had intentionally documented the abuse. It wasn't enough to commit violence. They needed to preserve it, watch it, maybe even relive it. That act of recording their cruelty added another layer of horror to an already gut-wrenching case. But in a grim twist of fate, the very evidence they created to flaunt their dominance became the instrument of their downfall. Every second of video became a piece of the prosecution's case. Every scream, every frame, every face in the footage spoke louder than any testimony. These weren't crimes committed in a frenzy. They were deliberate, methodical, and shamelessly preserved. And now, those digital recordings stand as irrefutable proof of guilt. Mahogany Jackson's murder has left behind hard truths that no one wants to confront. We talk about evil as something that lives in shadows, something foreign, something other. But Mahogany's killers weren't lurking strangers. They were people within her circle, people who had shared time and space with her. It forces us to reconsider how we define danger. Sometimes, the most harmful people are the ones smiling beside us. The betrayal she experienced is hard to fathom. She had laughed with these people, trusted them, maybe even confided in them. And yet, they turned on her in the most violent and inhumane way. This wasn't a random act of brutality, it was targeted, personal, and filled with malice. It forces us to ask, how well do we really know the people around us? There were signs. Moments that, in hindsight, might have served as warnings. The theft of her firearm was more than just a loss of property, it was a betrayal that foreshadowed the danger she was in. When someone you know steals from you, it says something about who they are. When those around you settle scores through humiliation and force, that's a flashing red light. In Mahogany's case, the red flags were all there. But like many of us, she believed she could handle it. She wanted to reclaim what was hers, to stand up for herself. She couldn't have predicted that it would cost her everything. Technology played both sides in this case. Mahogany used her phone to send her final plea for help, a desperate attempt to survive. That message was her lifeline. But once she was in captivity, that same phone was turned against her. Her captors demanded her password, stripped her of communication, and used their own phones to record every tormenting moment. The very tools we use to stay connected became instruments of abuse and ultimately, justice. This case reminds us of the power of speaking out. So many crimes unfold in silence because people ignore the signs. If you see someone being mistreated, threatened, or pulled into toxic circles, say something. Violence doesn't always arrive unannounced. It often walks through the door as someone familiar. Mahogany's story is a brutal illustration of what happens when toxic behavior is tolerated, excused, or ignored. She should still be here, watching her daughter grow, chasing her dreams of becoming a cosmetologist, and building the life she had envisioned. Instead, her life was taken in the most horrific way by people who chose cruelty over compassion. Mahogany was more than a victim. She was a mother, a daughter, a young woman full of promise.
2, 3.
Y'all know she like to hang around a little bit. Y'all know she always like to hang around a little bit.
Her life mattered. We tell stories like Mahogany's not to shock, but to shed light on the truths we too often overlook. Behind every headline is a human being, someone who loved, who dreamed, and who deserved better. Mahogany's life was stolen, but her story must not be forgotten. Let it serve as a reminder of how fragile trust can be and how dangerous it is to ignore the warning signs around us. What do you think can be done to prevent tragedies like this? Have you ever been in a situation where someone close to you revealed a darker side? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice might be the insight someone else needs to stay safe. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Crimes Venue. Don't forget to also visit our well-curated playlist for more touching stories. We're committed to telling the stories that matter, not just to remember the victims, but to help others avoid a similar fate. Thank you and see you in our next video.